Mahathir Bio of Sierra Leone assumes chairmanship of ECOWAS as President Tinubu completes 2 terms.
I remain confident that with the continued cooperation of all its members, ECOWAS will scale over greater heights.
NUJ at 70, journalists chart new course for Nigeria's narrative.
National cohesion and public trust in democratic institutions.
LA files cocaine trafficking attempt of makeup artist.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on second Nigeria-Brazil strategic dialogue mechanism, plus 67th ECOWAS summit.
The second Nigeria-Brazil strategic dialogue mechanism holds this June here in Abuja from the 24th to the 27th, bringing together key decision makers from both countries to advance partnerships across critical sectors.
And these sectors are as diverse as they are strategic, from trade and agriculture to energy, defense, innovation, and even the creative economy. This is not just diplomacy, it's dialogue with a purpose.
Yeah, dialogue with a purpose. The strategic dialogue mechanism itself was established back in 2013. It is held every 2 years, with Nigeria and Brazil taking turns to host. This year is Nigeria's turn and expectations are high.
Indeed, and the timing is also significant. This edition falls right in line with President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, which prioritizes economic revival, global partnership, and a stronger international presence for Nigeria.
It's designed to do a few things very deliberately: to raise public awareness about the partnership with Brazil, to celebrate results from past collaborations, and to put Nigeria firmly on the map of South-South cooperation.
It is also a platform for action. We're talking high-level meetings, business matchmaking, investment talks, and over 30 memoranda of understanding expected to be signed during the week.
So at the core of it, the SDM is about attracting investment, creating technical partnerships, and building bridges between governments, businesses, communities in both countries.
So today on Good Morning Nigeria, we are taking a closer look at this important dialogue, what it means for Nigeria's economy, where the opportunities lie, and how communication will shape its success.
I'm Ademola Adeoye, and it's a pleasure to have you with us on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, the first this week.
And in part 2 of the program, we're shifting gears to the 67th ECOWAS summit, where President Mahathir Bio of Sierra Leone has assumed the chairmanship of ECOWAS after President Bola Tinubu's 2-term tenure ends. I am Juma Yusuf. We're live on the network service of the NTA. Much later, our newspaper reviewer Chukudi Okolu-Baja will be joining us for newspaper review.
But first, let's catch the morning headlines with Stella Inamete, who is standing by. Good morning, Stella. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning, Ademola. Good morning, Juma. Here's the morning news. President Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone is the new chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, taking over from President Bola Tinubu, who held the position for 2 terms. The handing over was at the 67th ordinary session of the authority in Abuja.
I remain confident that with the continued cooperation of all its members, ECOWAS will scale over greater heights in our collective pursuit of peace, security, stability, and prosperity for our people and for our region.
ECOWAS must reform itself and become more transparent, efficient, and responsive to its people's needs.
President Bola Tinubu has expressed anguish over the suicide bombing in Konduga, Borno State at the weekend. The president, in a statement, mourned those who lost their lives, describing the attack as cowardly. He urged security agencies to double their efforts in routing remnants of the Boko Haram insurgents who resort to attacks on soft targets as a diversionary tactic. President Tinubu condoled with the government and people of Borno State over the incident and directed the National Emergency Management Agency to support survivors. Meanwhile, the president also sympathized with the families of those killed or injured by an explosion on Saturday morning in Kano. The explosion at the scrap metal factory affected 15 people, with 5 of them losing their lives. A recent comment made by Sule Lamido, former governor of Jigawa State, in which he accused President Bola Tinubu of supporting the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, has been debunked by the presidency. Sule Lamido's claims that Tinubu's mother, late Abibatu Mogaji, mobilized market women to back the annulment were allegations described as false, but rather Lamido, as secretary of the Social Democratic Party, the party whose candidate MKO Abiola won the June 12 election, was among those who failed to oppose the military's injustice, while Senator Bola Tinubu stood firm even before late General Abacha dissolved the political parties and all democratic institutions, including the National Assembly on November 17, 1993, following his coup. Bayo Nonuga, special advisor to the President, Information and Strategy, in a press release says President Bola Tinubu and other Democrats played a crucial role by opposing the June 12, 1993 election and advised Lamido to check his facts before going to the press. President Tinubu, he says, was and remains a steadfast advocate for democracy. The National Assembly has assured Nigerians and the international community of an inclusive and far-reaching constitution alteration process that will address citizens' aspirations and deepen democracy in Nigeria. Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives Benjamin Kalu stated this at a dialogue with the diplomatic community at the National Assembly. Kalu, who chairs the House Committee on Constitution Review, also sought interparliamentary cooperation and technical expertise from the international community to enrich Nigeria's constitution reforms.
To engage with us, share your experiences, and join us on this journey of constitutional renewal. Together we can craft a constitutional framework that not only addresses Nigeria's current challenges, but also anticipates future needs and aspirations.
After 7 decades of profound contributions to national development, journalists in the country now have a renewed task of promoting Nigeria's narrative first in the face of modern realities. This was central at the celebration of journalistic excellence, book presentation, and the future of the media at Nigeria Union of Journalists at 70.
The media not only honors the sacrifices that battered our democracy, but also helps to promote national cohesion and public trust in democratic institutions.
A 43-year-old female makeup artist was arrested by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency at the Murtala Muhammed International Airport in Ikeja, Lagos. The suspect, who claimed to be traveling to India for a fibroid surgery, had cocaine factory-fitted in her bag. Additional NDLEA operatives intercepted 1 million pills of opioids in Bauchi while raiding provision stores in Edo. And those are the highlights of the news at this time. Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly with Ademola and Jume after this commercial break. Don't go away.
Have you heard the news? The federal government of Nigeria, through its direct benefit transfer program, has started the disbursement of 75,000 naira per household in 3 installments of 25,000, 25,000, 25,000 naira. Each recipient must have a validated national identification number, NIN, to receive the payment on behalf of their household members. To benefit, your household must be in the National Social Register of Poor and Vulnerable Households in Nigeria. The federal government's direct benefit transfer program is helping to reduce the effect of suffering while promoting financial and economic inclusion for the poor and vulnerable population in Nigeria.
Ìjọba fún wa ní 75,000. NIN ni mí àti káàdì láti lọ gbà. Nígbà tí mo sì gbà, mo fi ṣe nǹkan tó dáa, mo ra oògùn nínú rẹ̀. Mo ra oúnjẹ tí màá jẹ nínú rẹ̀. Mo sì wọkọ̀ mi náà ń bẹ. A sì fi yòókù ṣe ọ̀rọ̀ ajé pé ká tó máa rí gbé bá. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ ìjọba wa òkè.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation, Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, in collaboration with the National Social Investment Programs Agency, National Social Safety Net's Coordinating Office, and the National Cash Transfer Office.
Confidence is important in life's little moments. Strong teeth can help, even if they get her into trouble sometimes. A great smile is useful to break the ice, and making friends is easier when you know you have fresh breath. I give my family confidence with Pepsodent Triple Protection 123. Its antibacterial action formula gives them cavity protection, white teeth, and fresh breath. The confidence of 3 toothpaste in 1. Pepsodent Triple Protection 123.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring an impeccable personality with purposeful leadership.
Abba Abubakar Aliu, MD, CEO of Rural Electrification Agency, takes us through the gamut of activities and mandates of Rural Electrification Agency, as well as its achievements and dreams.
I really want to see that I leave a lasting legacy that can be spoken of in a very long period of time.
Welcome to a world of fun and excitement as we also present an assemblage of professionals in the media space. Some compelling NTA programs, current trends in the fashion world, ICT, sports, entertainment, and lots more.
Meet Professor Charles Anosike, the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, as he shares his vision in repositioning NIMET as a key player in Nigeria's climate strategy.
Get a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
When you're low on energy and need a break, give yourself a treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate. Smooth. Crafted from cocoa, milk, and sugar. Creamy, chocolatey, frothy goodness, rich taste, so satisfying.
Cadbury 3-in-1 Hot Chocolate, the treat you deserve.
Does your toothpaste give you complete fresh protection? New Close Up Toothpaste Complete Fresh Protection takes care of your 5 important oral care needs. It gives you strong teeth, prevents tooth holes, cleans deeply, fights bacteria, and gives you fresh breath. Complete fresh protection from Close Up.
The Nigerian national flag represents our country's history, culture, and identity. It was designed in 1959. The colors are Emerald Green 2.0, which represents agriculture, and Immaculate White represents unity and peace. Know how to handle our flag. Illuminate the environment or don't fly the flag overnight. Do not fly a dirty or tattered flag. Take such flag to the nearest National Orientation Agency office for proper disposal and replacement. The national flag can only be flown at half-mast on the directive of the federal government. The national flag must be flown at the same or higher height when displayed alongside other flags. Don't burn or allow the national flag to fall on the ground. Do not print, decorate, modify, or insert the coat of arms on the flag. Our national heroes are not buried with the flag. They are honored by presenting it to their next of kin during interment. Respect our national flag. Be a real Nigerian.
This message was brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Hey Nigeria, ready to breathe cleaner air and save money? Let's talk about gas. Drive with CNG, the smart, cost-effective choice. Fill up for less and travel further. Save money, save the planet. Switch to LPG for cooking. It's cleaner, healthier, and better for environment. Say goodbye to smoke and eye problems. Do you know Nigeria is a gas nation ranked 9th globally with over 209 trillion cubic feet of gas reserve? Gas isn't just for cooking and driving. It powers industries too. Cleaner, cheaper, and more efficient. And the best part, conversion centers are popping up everywhere. It's never been easier to switch to gas. Join the cleaner energy revolution. Choose LPG for cooking and CNG for your vehicles. Clean energy for brighter future. This message is brought to you by the Office of the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, supported by the Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA.
Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Up next on the program is Newspaper Review.
Reviewer Chukudi Okolu-Baja is in the studio. Chuks, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. How was your weekend?
Oh, fine. Rather cold weekend. The cold extends into Monday, but no one is complaining really.
When you say cold, I wonder. Which cold?
That means that human constitution varies from person to
Yes,
person.
yes.
Have you forgotten that she's a woman?
Oh, that's biological, isn't it? I didn't do so well in biology.
So okay, let's go to the
paper. Maybe I'll do better there.
Let's go to the papers, Chukudi. And just below the masthead, we have Ecuador scraps visa-free transit. The Business Nigeria. Ecuador scrap visa-free transit for Nigerians, 44 orders. You find the details on page 2. And the headlines in the Business Nigeria, 50% CRR, 35% FG asset load squeeze Nigerian banks. Find all the details in the paper. And Nigeria reclaims palm oil industry as foreign firms exit, local players rise. We find the details in the paper. And Brent crude surged to 75.59 on Middle East tension, U.S. talk draw. And let's quickly go to the Pilot newspaper. And below the masthead of the Pilot newspaper, NDLEA arrests woman on road to India for fibroid surgery with 2.20 kg cocaine. Details on page 5. Governor Sani demands justice for families of 12 Kaduna travelers killed in Plateau. You find details on page 5. Ijos reject Nigeria-Morocco pipeline deal. That's the headlines in the Pilot. Nigerian Pilot says gas pipeline project crime against Ijos of Niger Delta region. That it will enslave, kill Ijos for next millennia. That gas will power human civilization. Insists project lacks transparency, alleging that FG didn't follow Public Procurement Act. And writes President of European Union to address concerns of Ijos on the project. You find all the details on page 4. Gunmen abduct High Court judge at Bielsa's Eatery car park. Find the details on page 5. At the bottom plate of the Nigerian Pilot, Yelwata, 50 fake internally displaced persons nabbed in Benue. Diri approves automatic employment for UAT first class graduates. And Tinubu didn't support annulment of June 12 election. That's coming from the presidency. SEC bars independent directors from becoming executive directors. Find the details on page 6. Champion Nigeria's democratic progress, Idris urges NUG at 70. And African workers demand zero tolerance for perpetrators of sexual violence in conflict zones. You find details on page 5. Demola.
Okay, I have the Daily Trust newspaper, and just the major headline reads, Plateau killings, death toll hits 13. Survivors narrate ordeal. Victims buried in Mango, Kwampan. Well, that's all. Chooks?
Yeah, that's all. But it's eerie in the sense that the orgy of violence continues to the detriment of the fatherland. Because when one person loses their life rather in a horrific manner, it simply makes you shudder, not just for self, but for the fact that this country is beginning to experience things that make you think that our problems could be spiritual. I mentioned this the other time. I don't want to be called Pastor Chukudi because I'm nowhere near that. But the amount of blood flowing in this country is alarming. It doesn't make sense anymore. Are we reinventing the tribal wars of those days in 2025 or what? What is happening? And the most frustrating aspect of it is that you don't get to hear that anybody got arrested when these things happen. President Bola Tinubu asked a question in Yelawata. You mean nobody has been arrested after this? Governor Sani is talking from Kaduna. He's calling for arrest of the perpetrators. But there's something he said which should be interesting to us. I am one of those who keep asking, what stopped killings in southern Kaduna since Sani got in there? He is recommending the model he adopted. Do we need to go and study that model to find out how we can spare the lives of helpless human beings who are just engaging in normal activity? It doesn't make sense anymore.
And in a branded vehicle, abuse area.
Juma, it doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't. Self-liquidation is not an option.
I mean, even if they say the other maybe it's not branded, but this has a brand, on the vehicle, ABU Zaria. They can't all be illiterate.
There's a name in my village. It's called Ngemegwai. Let me use pidgin to interpret it. I go do you back. I had a teacher who was, he's dead now. We were talking one day and he said, Ngemegwai must have been named because somebody's trying to mention a particular part of their history. But that he doesn't think Ngemegwai is a good name. Because if we keep on megwaying, revenging and on, when are we going to stop?
That's the question.
Forgiveness matters in life. You understand?
Yes.
It's not. I don't understand what is happening anymore. I don't.
Okay, let's go to the Ijaws reject Nigeria-Morocco pipeline deal.
I don't have the details of that story. Is it that there will be exposure to environmental, hazards or what?
They say it's a crime against Ijaws of Niger Delta.
That
will enslave, kill Ijaws for next millennia.
Fine, they still have not said the reason for it. I need to go into details to know what they are talking about. If you don't want the gas pipeline, is it the flaring that you prefer? The flaring itself is a very harmful thing. But when we are able to take to Morocco, the incidence of flaring will be highly reduced.
And they've written to the president of the European Union.
European Union, I saw that bit. I saw the headlines, but the entrails, as
what
you
will
talk
the
about
European
Nabigo.
Union president do? It is an African matter.
Well,
why do we always take our problem to other people to solve?
It's an African matter in the sense that it's happening within Africa, but that gas is bound for Europe. The thinking is when Nigerian gas gets to Morocco, it gets into Europe, and it's a large foreign exchange earner. In fact, it's a real deal.
Yes.
They've been talking about it, Trans-Saharan pipe and all that, It's been on for a long time. It is to the huge benefit of Nigeria financially, economically, But we need to know what these our brothers and sisters are talking about so that if there's some iota of credibility in it, we need to address it so that business can go on unhindered.
Yeah, so that business can go on unhindered. And
yes.
That's it for today, Chukudi.
Oh, that's why you shut me up.
I will generally walk.
Even my dear Jumai has joined him. It's okay. Good morning, everyone.
Well, we'll now take a break now. The conversation will kickstart after the break. Stay with us.
Unit is the Naira, while the minor unit is the Kobo. They are both in notes and coins. The Naira is more than just a medium of exchange. It bears the images of our heroes. So, stop abusing the Naira. It is a criminal offense to spray the Naira at events. Stop stepping on the Naira. It's not your enemy. Do not squeeze, ruffle, or write on the Naira. Handling the Naira with dirty or oily hands can deface the Naira. Love the Naira as you love yourself. Be a real Nigerian. Do not abuse the Naira.
Mention a popular Nigerian childhood game of the 80s and 90s.
Police and thief. Playing rubber.
No be arm rubber.
Mommy and daddy.
Mommy and...
I like to eat.
That's my boy.
I like to go out, but sometimes my pocket just tells me,
bruh,
go inside.
Don't be only you. Mention something you would do if you meet with a lion. Call for help.
Help me. The lion, they carry me, go here.
I like to watch football with him. Nice. Not Arsenal. They know they carry league. Drop some bars.
All right. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
You did not even rap.
If you're happy and you know it, let me see your 32. Smile for me, baby. You know they give me attitude.
Felicity, they're here.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand, we make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a
we are Nigeria, strengthening unity. We know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
At NTA Television College JOS, you will dive into exhilarating hands that will fuel your passion in education and propel your career to new heights. We don't just teach, we craft the next generation of media leaders. Explore our diverse offering, understanding the personnel matters and issues in the public service, basic development communication, financial reporting under IPSAS and interpretation of public sector accounting standard IPSAS, audit, internal check and control management, video camera maintenance, new technologies, optics, fiber, IP technologies, automation, storage management, and wireless technology. Challenges and opportunities in the secretarial profession in the digital age. Digital marketing, basic drama, online reporting, understanding the provisions of the revised public service, audio engineering operations and maintenance, camera operations, and intermediate drama. Mark your calendar. The second quarter of 2025 is your launch pad. This is your moment to seize the future. Announcer Management.
The Nigeria Coat of Arms is the official seal that represents the authority of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, hung on the wall behind the seat of the principal officer of the government, supported by the portrait of the serving president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It has 7 features. The black shield stands for Good Earth of Nigeria. The silver wavy band stands for the confluence of rivers Niger and Benue. The 2 white horses stands for dignity. The yellow flora is a common wildflower throughout Nigeria. The red eagle stands for strength. The wreath is in our national colors of green, white, green. The motto, unity and faith, peace and progress, is written on a beautiful yellow ribbon, and it's a maxim for all Nigerians. Be a real Nigerian.
The federal government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and to kickstart our conversation, let's take this background report by Timothy Yusuf.
The second Nigeria-Brazil Strategic Mechanism (SDM) is scheduled to take place in Abuja, Nigeria. This high-level diplomatic and investment engagement aims to deepen collaboration between Nigeria and Brazil across key sectors including agriculture, energy, defense, innovation and creative economy, as well as digital trade. The dialogue will also feature the Nigeria-Brazil Business Forum on June 25, bringing together government officials, private sector leaders and over 400 million combined consumers to explore opportunities across markets. Over 30 memoranda of understanding are expected to be signed during the event, covering various sectors and aiming to unlock new investment flows, facilitate technical cooperation and strengthen strategic business partnerships between Nigeria and Brazil. Established in 2013, the Nigeria-Brazil Strategic Dialogue Mechanism alternates hosting between both nations every 2 years. Nigeria is hosting the second session. Analysts believe that the dialogue aligns with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, bringing together Africa's largest economy and Latin America's biggest economy to strengthen cooperation across multiple sectors. Let's now join our guest in the studio for details of the conversation. Second Nigeria-Brazil Strategic Dialogue Mechanism, SDM.
Thank you, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. And now joining us here to begin our conversation on the second Nigeria-Brazil Strategic Dialogue Mechanism, SDM. Let me first introduce Mariam Moon, who is the Technical Assistant on Agriculture Office of the Vice President. Mariam Moon, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. Also joining us is the Ambassador Janet Olisa, Director Regions, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador, you are welcome.
Good morning.
Nice to have you join us. And also seated here in the studio is Patience Okala, Special Advisor to the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. You're welcome to be with us.
Thank you so much.
It's all about girl power today.
Yes, it is.
All right. Okay, let's just kickstart the conversation. This relationship actually started since 2013. So tell us how far since it started. What has been the gain so far?
I think a lot has happened since 2013, and we'll start by mentioning how it has affected us on a diplomatic level.
Okay.
To that end, I think that Ambassador Olisa will be the best person to tell you from a diplomatic standpoint.
Okay, Ambassador Olisa.
Yes, Nigeria-Brazil has been on since independence, literally one of our oldest partners. And if you also follow our roots, we have had even pre-colonial times and colonial era. So we've had a very robust a relationship. Yes, there was a time where there was a bit of quiet, and then now we're back. So in 2013, we did sign the strategic dialogue, which Nigeria is one of the few countries that Brazil has such a dialogue with, the mechanism. And we kind of moved from there. Our relationship blossomed. We've been moving on with quite a number of visits between both sides, and the business sector has been reeling in on those supports, and we've been having a lot of B2B where government facilitate the business. Quite a number of Brazilians are in the business sector here in Nigeria. Nigerians are also moving in. So right now it's a question of how do we strengthen what we've already started many years ago, decades ago. And with the two presidents, very close friends, President Lulu and His Excellency Tinubu, it's been a wonderful relationship since they both came in, and we're trying to make sure that we buttress and strengthen what is on ground.
I'm still going to stay with you briefly. We know we have a long history with Brazil, the transatlantic trade and all that, and a lot of Nigerians are settled there. They are Brazilians, no longer Nigerians. So why is Brazil such an important strategic partner for Nigeria at this moment, after a lull from the first summit?
We've never changed on being a strategic partner. We've always been. Yes, we've had a bit of quiet. We had COVID at a point. I think there was supposed to be a visit, but unfortunately COVID hit. The very last minute, the then Vice President had to shelve his trip, and we found ourselves in a situation whereby whatever happens, the dialogue continues. So we continue to push forward bilaterally through diplomatic channels. Our ambassadors kept getting to ensure that the business sector, because with Brazil it has always been business, and that's what is important to both countries. We've always ensured that we improve the trade balances. Yes, it's not really in our own favor, but it's been growing steadily. And now with Nigeria even joining the BRICS as a partner member, that even further brings our alliance closer. So we haven't had any gap. We've just not had high-level visits the way we are now having. Mr. President has visited Brazil for the G20, and every time they meet at international fora, they never cease to find that time to kind of blend. And I believe as soon as he arrived at the first G20 summit in India, the two presidents said, look, it's time for us to work. And we've literally been on the run, working to make sure that everything comes together. So we've never really had a dull moment.
Okay, not a dull moment. And it's time for the two countries to work together. So let's look at how this dialogue mechanism can actually benefit the two countries. What are the potential benefits? Marion, let me just bring you into this discussion.
Yes, thank you so much. So I just want to add first a little bit on what Ambassador is sharing. It's also important to note that Brazil has a lot of similarities to Nigeria, apart from our sort of historical ties. You know, if you look at our population sizes, if you look at our agroecological zones, you know, tropical agriculture is very similar in Brazil to us. Brazil is just a few steps ahead. Right? So what is it that we can leverage and try and work with them? And the beauty of this similarity is also that it's not just about what can Brazil do for and with Nigeria, but what can Nigeria do for and with Brazil? Since we're so similar in so many different ways, how can we come closer together? Even if you look geographically, linking Africa and South America, what better than a hub out of Nigeria, right? Directly across the Atlantic into Sao Paulo. So those similarities, there's a lot of rich ingredients. So we're already doing something, as Ambassador said, but how can we take this to the next level? You know, some of the things we're working very closely with the ministry with, how can we begin to take all this potential to the next level for both countries? Okay. So when we talk about the SDM, it's really how do we capitalize on this potential? And I think that His Excellency the President has really made it very clear his agenda for this country, his ambitions for this country, right? How do we create those platforms? And in this dialogue, we're talking about the corridors between our two countries, whether it's from the creative sector to the diplomatic, you know, corridors, to the agricultural corridors. How do we strengthen these corridors so that we can cross, right? Brazil to come to Nigeria and Nigeria to come to Brazil. And how do we do that from a government to government perspective, and then ensure that that is creating the environment for the business to business perspectives?
Quite interesting. Government, the business, I believe from what we've read and what we've heard, Brazil and Nigeria are ready for business. Let me bring in Patience Okala into this conversation. How does this dialogue between Brazil and Nigeria reflect a shift in Nigeria's foreign policy priorities towards the global south? There are so many countries in the global south. Why is it Brazil? Why Brazil?
And let me start by just recollecting Mr. President's agenda. One of the issues that is paramount on his agenda is the diversification of our economy. And for us to be able to do that, we have to reach out, not just to our old friends, but we have to be ready to formulate new friendships and relationships. And of course, given the global headwinds now around trade-related issues, it is important that we cut new friendships. So why Brazil in particular? It could be Brazil, it could be another country, but basically because we have a lot of shared history and there is reciprocal appetite for engagement on an investment and bilateral level. You have a lot of Brazilian investors. For this SDM, we have about 80 Brazilian companies that are coming into Nigeria. Okay. They are not coming for tourism. They are coming for matchmaking. They're coming to find out where their projects can meet opportunities. Okay. We also have like a commensurate number of Nigerian businesses that have been listed to engage with these Brazilians. So we are all having a business forum that is part of the SDM. The SDM takes place tomorrow, and then there's a business forum on Wednesday, because we want to ensure that the appetites from both countries find fruition in our projects. There are so many projects that we can engage with. We had back-end conversations with the Brazilians prior to this event. It's not just a talk show where we just come in and do things for the optics, but for months there has been a lot of planning going on. And one of the primary things that we have been talking about is how do we actually make sure we have the right people in the room? How do we promote the businesses? How do we engage the projects? So it is something that is going to be very dynamic in the way we operate it, and it will be impactful for both of our economies. Nigeria is looking for new friends. Brazilians have decided that they want to reach out to us. Hey, who are we to say no? We're courting our new friends, and we're also managing our old friends as well.
So definitely you're going to have a whole lot of private sector, drive this economic cooperation between Nigeria and Brazil.
Yeah. So private sector for the SDM itself is a bilateral event, but we have private sector sitting in like an observer capacity on Tuesday. So they are sitting in the room. Usually, sometimes one of the complaints that you find, that you hear, is that government just sits together and decides what the private sector wants. Okay. So we don't want that to be the case in the SDM. So the private sector will be sitting in the room in an observer capacity, but the very next day, it's for the private sector. The Honorable Minister, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, will be opening the business forum. Okay. There are different rooms. There are sector-specific rooms, like regulatory rooms for dialogue. We have one on digital trade and investment, because that is one area that we have engaged with the Brazilians and found out that they have a huge appetite for. We have private sector, having engaged just in observer capacity on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they're in the room and they're having conversations with their counterparts. It will also provide us an opportunity for policy dialogue. I'm talking about the business forum. So it's not just investment promotion and talking about projects, but you get to also feel the pulse of the private sector and find out what their concerns are, as even in relation to the dialogue themselves. What do they consider to be priority? What should government be advancing on their behalf? So all of that will happen on Wednesday, and it will also provide an opportunity for us from the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment to harvest some of those policy concerns and see how we can advocate and move for changes that will further strengthen our business relationship with Brazil.
Reciprocal appetite. I like that. It shows that Nigerians are hungry to go out there and, make their mark on the global scene. It's quite interesting. Let's bring in Ambassador Janet into this conversation now. What specific area of cooperation do you think has the most promise for economic, stability in Nigeria?
The beauty about Brazil is that it's a very diverse economy. And like Ms. Moon said, Brazil is a step ahead. And so we're talking about defense, talking about energy agriculture. And in agriculture, we're also talking about livestock. And it is not just a question of a particular sector. Brazil is vast. Brazil has shown that certain things are possible. You can turn desert into an arid land, and they've done it. It's seen, and we've visited. Every time, like last year, August, we were there for G20, and in the silence of G20, we had a trade exhibition and visit in Sao Paulo. Again, Brazil came down early part of this year. Again, scouting, checking what health sector, what are we talking about in terms of the area that they can bring in their expertise, area that they know that Nigeria already has a market for, and how do we collaborate? Let's not forget the culture and tourism. We have a BASA agreement that is almost ready for signing, and that, like Ms. Moon said, we're talking about a direct flight from here straight to Sao Paulo. It takes almost, in some cases, 48 to 72 hours to get to Brazil. Whereas if we have a direct flight, we're talking about 8-10 hours maximum. Who doesn't want to do a quick run into Sao Paulo, which is a hub like Lagos, and dash back? And from Sao Paulo, you can link. Then we get access into the Caribbean. Because if you do, I was Nigeria's High Commissioner to Jamaica, and I can tell you, I used to say we do an Israelite journey. We go, if you don't have the US or UK visa, you go to Addis to Sao Paulo to Panama City to Kingston, Jamaica. So now with this, it's a straight flight into Sao Paulo, and then you can access that part of the world and the Caribbean. So we're not just talking about just Jamaica alone. We are also opening the corridor to other parts of the world. So it is a time for us to leverage on this particular partnership, get our trade moving. And again, on the foreign arm, Nigeria, we've had a beautiful relationship, like I said earlier. But having that beautiful relationship, having visa waivers on diplomatic and official passports, we've had that for years. But are we the ones who really drive the trade, or the private sector? So, again, we must thank CG, who, like the essay said, we have about 80 companies, and all of them were giving gratis visas. Come in, let's talk trade. So every sector in Nigeria is putting their hands together to make this a success.
To make it a success. You talked about waivers for businesses, but a lot of countries are now cutting down on visas. Will visa on entry be on the table as part of the memorandum of understanding that will be signed during, I mean, for Nigerians, not just business Nigerians, people who want to go to school, people, because it cuts across everything, from health to agriculture to defense and all that. Would we have a visa on arrival? Well,
that is a conversation we would have, but do not forget that for a country to have visa on arrival for a large population like Nigeria, there has to be a lot of negotiations. Let's look at the nitty-gritty on how it's going to work and see what are the areas and the sectors. Education, like you said, is an area, but it's a discussion on the table for us to have.
Okay, there's a discussion on the table. We do hope that it will be discussed when, yes, at the dialogue. The SDM, how does it fit into Nigeria's, Mariam, how does it fit into Nigeria's strategy for South-South cooperation, and what benefit can be expected?
So just a bit more background into the SDM. So the current Vice President of Brazil is also their Minister of Development, Trade, Investment and Services. So he comes here in a dual capacity. So there's a lot of actionable next steps that we could agree with Brazil and very quickly move ahead with this. And how do we begin to have some of those commitments that we can then follow up and really make sure that we can implement those to really open the doors. So I think when we look at it from a sort of South-South cooperation, it's really around two very large economies, Brazil being the biggest in South America and Nigeria being one of the biggest and most populous on the continent. So having those two, being able to work much better or more efficiently together begins to take that conversation to the next level. Okay. Ambassador, and I see you have talked about 30 MOUs, and just so that we're all on the same page, it's 30 MOUs in discussion, right? But right now for this week, for SDM, we have 10 ready to sign. So the SDM is not the end of the process. It's about making sure we continue. The SDM is a platform that we're going to have biennially, so every 2 years. So the idea is to really have something very robust so that we can continue and make sure that all these platforms that need to be put in place are. One of them in discussion, and also Nigeria now being part of the BRICS fraternity, is currency swap. So there's a lot that's going to be coming, and not just from this week. But this week is just, we're revitalizing this conversation and dialogue with Brazil, but making sure that we can have it every 2 years. The other aspect I'd want to share is that the way the MOUs are structured are around selecting priority areas. So we're not trying to have a long list of so many things. It's about what are those priorities for the next 2 years, and how are we having mechanisms. If you look at how the Ministry of Justice, working with the Brazil counterparts, is structuring the MOUs, is that they're very actionable. Sometimes we sign things that are a very high level wish lists, which sometimes we end up having for so many years and we're not able to really action it. So the way they're also structured is a way we can hold each other accountable. So I believe almost every MOU talks about those mechanisms for how are we going to make sure that we can hold each other accountable for what we've put into those MOUs.
So what are the priorities for this discussion?
So I can maybe share a little bit about agriculture. So we're looking at it from, livestock, for example, and looking at how we can have systems in place for genetics, right? Our cows are producing 2 liters, 3 liters of milk a day, whereas you have breeds that can produce, 30 plus or 25 to 35 liters of milk. How can we quickly be able to integrate those genetics? And remember, Brazil's tropical agriculture is very similar to us. They've done a lot of research. How can we adopt, adapt, and have that technology transfer into Nigeria? So genetics is one, a very important one we want to work with under livestock, for example.
Yes, we saw recently the Minister of Livestock was in Brazil. You were there with him. Were you there with him?
No, I was not. There
was a lot of discussion on agriculture. Correct. And our President Tinubu has always said that food security is first and foremost for Nigerians. No Nigerian should go to bed hungry. So what kind of memorandum of understanding, apart from the livestock, will you be talking about? Would you be bringing to the table with Brazil in the area of mechanized agriculture in Nigeria and all that?
So we're looking at structures around the soy value chain, cassava value chain, agroforestry, but also the other big one is we've been in discussions for quite many years on this Green Imperative project with Brazil. And the Green Imperative project is really looking at stimulating and supporting agribusinesses across the country. So we've brought that back to the table and revived all the structures that we have. It's a very big and ambitious project, really, and looking at modernizing our agriculture and doing it from a private sector point of view. So it's looking at whether it's fisheries, whether it's livestock, whether it's crops, and how do we identify, businesses that have that potential. One, get them the capacity building, in matching them with the Brazilian support on capacity building and technology transfer, and then also on lending some capital to allow them to be able to access whatever technologies they've been given, from mechanization to seeds to whatever systems it is they need to take their business from producing X in output to Y in output.
Indeed. Okay. Apart from agriculture, Miss my Patience Okala, we talked about defense. All these things will not be possible without security in Nigeria. We know that most of the farmers can't go to farm. We bought the Tucano 12 from Brazil earlier. And what other discussion on defense is on the table during the SDM?
Okay, I'll answer that, and I'll just also circle back to the question around the MOUs. Yeah. So for defense, just to mention that there are a number of technical working groups that have been working on different priority sectors for engagement with the Brazilians. Defense happens to be one of them. There is one on legal issues, there is one on trade and investment, which the Honorable Minister herself oversights. There are different working groups, 7 in total. So for defense, there are also MOUs that they have looked inward at their own capacities and how they can leverage on an engagement with the Brazilian side. So I'm aware that there are some MOUs that are going to be signed that speak specifically to concerns around defense. Even manufacturing of some of these equipment that will require, so they're MOU specific to those. But just circling back to the point that Marion had made, on the MOUs, we have, just to mention, the Sugar Council. There are some MOUs in the pipeline, like have been mentioned earlier. From the Trade and Investment Working Group, there's one overarching MOU that is going to be signed by the Honorable Minister, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, and the Vice President, who doubles as the Minister of Development, Industry, Trade and Services of Brazil. So there is that overarching MOU, and the MOU covers almost all the mandates of the agencies under the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment that have any bearing with Brazil. So I'm talking about agencies like NIPC, Nigerian Investment. So there's a standalone MOU that is still in the works, but there is under that umbrella omnibus MOU, but there will be cooperation around investment promotion, facilitation, exchange of investment information, business delegations and all of that. There is one on that. Then it also covers activities of the NEPC, that's the Export Promotion Council. Because, I mean, what do we want to do? We want the private sector, we want them to come here and invest, and we want to be able to export our goods, okay? So there's that. And then there's an MOU also from the Sugar Council. So that is also in the under the agri value chain, but it's specific because Brazilians have some strength in that area that Nigerians would like to collaborate with them on. And then Standards Organization of Nigeria. If we're talking about exports, there are concerns around the standardization of our template, our processes and all of that. So there's an engagement that is already going on. That particular MOU is still in the pipeline. We also have an MOU by Family Homes. I think that is an SPV that sits under the Ministry of Finance, but they're involved in social housing. So it's also a discussion that we're going to be having with the Brazilians. As you can see, it is a very robust. It is a robust engagement. We are very determined that it doesn't.
So which means that you are going to have some government agencies play a role in this the dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. At the business forum, for example, so there is the opening plenary, there's the high-level discussion where the minister, the vice president are going to be speaking. And immediately after that, like I mentioned earlier, we have 5 thematic rooms, like deal rooms, where you see there are rooms on agric, on digital trade. I don't know if you're aware, I'm sure you're aware, that Nigeria currently sits as the co-champion of digital trade in Africa. Yeah, so designated by the AU Assembly of Heads of States and Government in February this year. So yeah, there's a room on digital trade and investment generally. There's a room on health, and there's one on solid minerals, I believe. So in the room on digital trade and investment, you will have NIPC sitting there, you will have NEPC, you will have standard organizations of Nigeria, you have the relevant agencies sitting and engaging with Brazilian businesses. So the businesses are there, government is taking a backseat at that business forum when it comes to B2B. You are listening to what the businesses are doing. You are hearing, you are also providing context and guidance, explication of what the policy framework is that will enable their dream of engaging as businesses that will bring it to fruition. So the private sector is very involved. The MDAs too are very involved. By the time this is said and done, we would have really pulled out all the value that we can get from an engagement with Brazilians.
Interesting.
Yes, I would like to add something.
Okay.
I want to recognize some of the work the Ministry of Health have been doing. I think what they're bringing to the SDM is quite interesting, and they've done quite a bit of work. As you know, there's been sort of some of the shifts going on in the health sector and a lot of the support that we get. And the Minister of Health has really taken sort of you know, the bull by its horns. And one of the things they're doing is really positioning Nigeria as a destination for the production of different medicines and vaccines. And this is something Brazil is very strong at. In fact, Brazil has idle capacity, you know, where they've reached, and not just across sort of health, also vaccines when it comes into livestock sector.
Including alternative medicine too.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So one of the things they're doing is how can we look at what Nigeria intends to spend as a pool for investment. Why don't you come, instead of me buying from a Brazilian company, why don't you come and produce it here and I will buy from you right here in Nigeria. So the way the Ministry of Health is positioning the potential of Nigeria to attract investment, I think is very commendable and is very interesting, and something the Brazilians have taken quite strongly. There's quite a strong delegation coming in with the Vice President of Brazil to really look at what is this potential around health. And then the other one is also around the creative economy. I think there's a lot of excitement from both sides, and I'd like Ambassador to share also a little bit about, you know, the request from Brazil for Yoruba teachers. And, you know, that's also very, like I said, it's not just about what is Brazil wanting here. What does Brazil want us to take there? So maybe Ambassador can share a little bit more about that.
That is, the two countries are leveraging on each other's expertise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That, like,
in the culture sector, we have audiovisual, we have tourism, and if you recall, we do have a house in Bahia, which we are revitalizing, and one of the major things is going back to the roots, and through the Technical Aid Corps under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we're working on seeing how we can bring that synergy back. And when we're talking about culture, it's not just Yoruba language, Yoruba Orisha, the religious
because we know there's a lot of
yes,
Yoruba culture
yes,
in
yes,
Brazil.
Cuisine and all, bringing it back to fruition. And again, talking about other MOU, NDLA has one already ready for signing. The Ministry of Power, you mentioned defense, it's done and dusted, just waiting for the signatures to be put. Under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have 2 MOUs. Now, we must be able to track. After everything is done, we must be able to track what everyone is doing. So the framework we have to track that is called the political consultation under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to bring all the MBAs, okay, what have you done in this sector?
That's monitoring and reporting.
Monitoring, serious on, and if you follow the administration with the ministerial mandate, every quarter we go to mark what we have achieved. So the MFA needs to track what all the MDAs vis-a-vis on the other side as our responsibility to coordinate the 2 countries. So we track on our side, we track on the Brazilian side.
You have set up mechanism for evaluation.
Yes, so that's called the political consultation, which will be signed also. And also we have our Foreign Service Academy. If you recall, we diplomats, we have our own academy. Every country does. So we're having the synergy between the 2 countries' academy. And education, we have an existing MOU on education. So what Brazil is saying, and we are saying, let's now talk about the protocol of implementation. So you see, dialogues have been ongoing. We are just refining it, improving it, and see how it's going to work. There is a proposal for ethanol. Now, that is a negotiation that's on the table. Again, it will take us another couple of months to finalize, but you know how far Brazil has gone in ethanol. So it is a continuous conversation that does not end just by having this SDM. The SDM is supposed to continue until the next one, which will be hosted by Brazil at the level again of both. I must thank both vice presidents for taking their time to make sure that this really happens at this material time. Because yes, background work is good, but when you put the big guys in front, then we all know that yes, we are serious.
The big guys and women. Interesting. We've talked about defense, agriculture, health, and Patience Okala. Let's talk about energy and economic investment. We know that Petrobras is beginning to show interest, to return to Nigeria and do business, into deep water oil sector. So what benefit is Nigeria going to take from that?
I think that Nigeria will take a lot of benefit, which is the reason why we are happy that the person who is coming is not just the vice president of Brazil, but he is also the minister that will take those decisions because he's the minister in charge of development, industry, trade, and services. So that is one key issue that will be discussed at the level of our vice president and the minister herself. We are actually looking forward to having this conversation. It is not one of the MOUs or anything that is being signed because it's a very high level conversation. Hopefully by the time the the vice president gets here, conversations will take place and we'll be able to share with the Nigerian public and say this is what we have done in relation to Petrobras.
Talking about interest in clean energy.
Yeah.
Nigeria is very interested. We have the blue economy out there.
Yeah.
And it's doing a great job.
Yeah.
So if Nigeria says we want this and Petrobras can come in, will there not be any contradiction from other oil companies that are already here in Nigeria?
Which is the reason why I said that conversation will happen at a very high level. It will happen, and we have given a lot of detail about the issues that are right within our purview to share. But because this is at the vice presidential level, and we're hoping that the conversation has just begun, we're hoping that we'll have more information about that to share when our principals have finished having this engagement, and then we can share with you.
Okay, Marion, let's see how this conversation actually can be sustained, because, you know, the ambassador talked about the issue of implementation, which usually is the problem anyway in every, you know, agreement reached. There's the implementation challenge. So how can the Nigerian-Brazil dialogue mechanism be sustained and institutionalized to ensure long-term benefits?
Great. So it's two things. Execution has a lot to do with intention. And I think this administration reviving or bringing back the SDM at the forefront, you know, the leadership being taken, I think that sorts out intention. So I think the intention is very clear and very deliberate and very strategic. The second thing is that if you've heard, you know, what we're all talking about, everybody has come to the table, the entire government. The other point to note is that today we have some of the delegates who've arrived early out in different states, you know, being hosted by different private sector companies. So we've also brought, not just to showcase the potential of Nigeria, but also understand that we are a federal system. So we've got the subnationals. A lot of these things will be implemented at the subnational level. Okay. So they've also come to the table. So we've had, you know, I can confidently say the entire government or the entire economy, the private sector, the subnationals, the federal government have all come together and everybody's playing a part very actively. So I think intention and willingness is very strong. So that's the first. And then the second very important one is what Ambassador has talked about, this political consultation MOU. So we are agreeing in writing to have structures to keep each other accountable. Because it is a dialogue, it is a partnership. So we're saying we want to keep each other accountable. And the fact that we are structuring it and signing on it, I think speaks volumes to our intention to implement. And then again, I want to emphasize the Ministry of Justice on both sides, how they have actually written out the MOUs. And you know, as we were going through and the working groups were doing the negotiations, we even had things we removed because we're prioritizing. So we've approached this thing from we want to implement. The whole build up, the preparation, the structures we're putting, the M&E mechanisms or accountability mechanisms. So I think that it's going to be very successful. And the fact that SDM is supposed to be every 2 years. Right? And if we make sure we meet every 2 years, we can't do all this on both sides at such a high level. And then in 2 years' time, we're coming back to say what? We have to come back to say the next thing. We've taken these steps. Where can we go? Where can we go? It's not something we're coming back after 5 years, right? So the fact that it's relatively frequent is going to sort of make sure we stay on our toes and are able to keep moving and implementing and sustain the momentum that we've started with.
How do you measure the success, I mean, that you have achieved over the years?
It's the metrics. You know, what are the trade volumes? What's the changes in that? You know, the FDI coming into the country. What are the changes in that? You'll see it from, you know, the travel between the two countries. So just the normal economic metrics that are available through the different MDAs. What NIPC will be reporting, what NEPC will be reporting, you know, what immigrations will be reporting. We're going to be able to see the changes from there.
Very interesting. And I want to remind Nigerians that you can send your contributions to this conversation and your questions so that we can show it to the guest, we can tell it to the guest, and maybe you might get answers. We have one that has just come in, said, good morning all. Is asking, are there rooms for interested individuals to join the conference now? How do I leverage on the gains in the nearest future without participating now? Patience Okala.
So is there room for people to engage?
Yes, yes, interested individuals to join the conference, and how do they leverage on the gains in the nearest future without participating now? No. They don't have to. Will you be on Zoom? People can join, or is there
so the SDM is a bilateral level engagement. Okay. So it's not open to all. It's bilateral. But the business forum is one that the person can actually join if this person is a business person. So it depends on what is the person's interest. Because if the person is a business person, then the person can join from the meeting on Wednesday and join us at the business forum. In terms of how do they benefit, I think the point has already been made. It is said in the Holy Book says that the sun shines on the just and the unjust. So if if we're able to gain traction in our business and investment relationship, if we have direct flights going through the two countries, if we have agreements that help to move our economic agenda, it benefits basically everybody else. Unless I'm not really getting what the person wants, but I think that if we have those economic benefits done, it benefits everybody. Whether we can have it on, I'm not sure that there is room for virtual engagement. There isn't.
On the business forum.
Correct, but for the business forum, if the person is a business person, then the person can join the business forum.
How can the private sector, we have small businesses coming up, you know, COVID-19 has shown us that small business can do well.
Absolutely.
So how can SMEs, you know, plug into these opportunities arising from this partnership? Small businesses.
So, in inviting businesses...
We know it's high, but how can the small ones come up?
So, the one that is really high is the higher level engagement on Tuesday, because it's at the level of our, you know, at the vice presidential level. The one for the businesses, we have not focused only on the multinationals or the big businesses. We do realize that small and medium enterprises contribute between 48 to 50% of our GDP. They struggle, but they are also economic. They enable diversification of our economy. They help us with job creation and a number of those things. So we have So we have also invited a number of SMEs. So in the companies that we have spoken about, we have 80 coming from Brazil. We have a commensurate number from Nigeria. Some of those are also SMEs. We have engaged with the organized private sector, NASIMA, the sector where the ministry has coverage, and a number of them are invited. So yes, they can participate. Not only that, their voices can be heard, and we can formulate relationships and match-make them with their counterparts in the Brazilian side.
Okay, thank you very much.
In addition to that, for those who are not able to physically participate, my advice would be to follow us on the news and see the outcome, and also to check with SMIDA. They'll be fully involved. So at the outcome of the whole meeting, SMIDA will say, okay, this is what we've taken out of this. Please, companies who are interested, come and blah, blah, blah. And so follow up with the relevant agency. SMIDA will be there, export promotion will be there. So it's, if you cannot physically be part, because I think it's a bit late now for registration, then it's to follow up with these agencies.
And also on the news as well.
On the news as well.
Okay, how will let's look at the positioning of Nigeria as a proactive player in international relations. How will this SDM, you know, position Nigeria?
It says we are not just open for business. We are already running with it. We are already implementing. Do not forget the last 2 days we've talked about the West African Economic Summit, first of its kind. and we're moving on to it means that the administration, since 2023, they came in, they are saying, this is where we want to focus on, the economy. You can't talk about security without the economy. You can't go to bed hungry and say you want to do governance. Democracy, you must have a full stomach or a half-empty one, but doesn't mean that you must go to bed hungry. And he's very clear about no one going to bed hungry. And that's why in 2023, state of emergency was declared on food security, which Ms. Moon is secretary of that unit. So it's been a whole lot of one after the other policies, engagement put in place. Brazil is a big player. We have to recognize that. And we're dealing like we have always put in mind that Nigeria, yes, we are big, but we still need and we have a lot to learn. So that's what we have at the moment, and we are saying, how do we improve what we have on ground? How do we ensure that the relationship we are having is not just clicking of wines, but we're actually folding our sleeves and going into the nitty-gritty of things.
So what should, yes.
I just wanted to, so she made a point about Nigeria wanting to learn. I also wanted to emphasize that it is both ways. In our back-end engagement with the Brazilians, they had talked a lot about our digital trade capacity, our fintechs, how we do it, how Nigeria has 5 of the 9 unicorns in Africa. They talked about our entertainment industry, our creatives, and actually said they were looking forward to coming to learn how we're able to do it on the continent. So the learning process is for both us as Nigerians and for them as Brazilians. So it will be a win-win, symbiotically beneficial relationship.
So what should...
Okay, you also want to add to it?
Just a little point that also some of the opportunities, like even just with the SDM, a lot of interpreters are being engaged. So Brazil's national language is Portuguese. So a lot of them are coming and needing translators to literally move with them. And you'll see, something similar with His Excellency the Vice President of Brazil. He's coming with interpreters. So these are small opportunities, but already with the business delegation that's already here, we're already seeing, they've engaged and hired interpreters to move with them. So I think the more that we will engage right, for breeding. So when that clarification was well understood and articulated, and the respective agencies on the Nigeria side, they were able to understand each other and facilitate this. In less than 2 weeks, 100 pregnant heifers landed in Lagos. So that is how quickly, things are moving. Once we've understood each other, those systems are in place, people are moving. Like Ambassador at the beginning of this conversation talked about, there were already things happening. But it was about how do we allow them or facilitate them to really to expedite. So I think what will happen is as we begin to crystallize these structures, sign these MOUs, allowing some of these things to happen, I think you will see things moving very quickly. And Nigerians are not slow.
No, we're very fast.
Yes.
Anything but slow.
Exactly. So I expect to see a lot. And the Brazilians are the same. They are not, I say that historical ties is very, very real.
It is.
Yes, it really is. So I expect things to move very quickly once sort of the path is clear for both sides.
So you're saying that the challenges of let's say cultural and linguistic barriers has been dealt with. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but already imagine that's just for a delegation who've arrived here, about 30 companies who are going out to the different states. Who've arrived here, about 30 companies who are going out to the different states. Now imagine when you're having hundreds of businesses coming in and out every month. Those are huge opportunities.
Huge opportunities, and we all know Nigerians love entertainment, and
Yes.
Brazil is one of the entertainment countries in the world. And we have the Odisha Festival. You know, it's so entertaining. It's out there, and I was watching on the internet. You know, everybody. Oh, so this happens in Nigeria. It's so beautiful. And then we have the Brazilian shows and all that. So it's so beautiful. And then we have the Brazilian shows and all that. So how are we coming together to, you know, portray the diverse cultural heritage that we have in Brazil and in Nigeria along the bilateral lines? Ambassador.
I'm smiling because there's one major thing here. Our Minister of Culture, Arts, Culture and Creative Industry will have her counterpart. So I think they're still in the show. So we have the Vice President who is also doubling with trade. We have our own trade minister. Then we have a culture on both sides meeting. And so we're going to have a whole explosion. And she's very much ready for that. There's a trip to Lagos, a field trip to Lagos to go to FIM1, the leather industry, to see what's happening in our creative industry there in Lagos. So we didn't limit everything to just Abuja. They're all moving now. So she is very much ready for to meet her counterpart. Like I said, they have 3 MOUs. I think they have the largest as I speak. And so that way she is very much ready to engage and to showcase. So the gala night on Tuesday evening is going to be that for us is practical for them to come. I recall some years ago, I was a middle cadre officer serving in Spain, and we had this future serving in Spain, and we had this future event, which is the tourism event. I asked one of them, what's so unique to you? Oh, we can't get to the shrine, but we can hang this in our room and remember that this is a destination. So now, years down the line, I'm still part of that conversation to now get the flights that will enable them
to come all the way
for the Otunshogu Festival. So we have a whole lot riding on our cultural heritage, and she's very much ready, in tune to make sure that happens.
All right. We have some comments from some of our viewers here, and this one is from Hafsat Mwazu. She says, good morning, Nigeria. It's great to know a lot of innovations are coming up soon. I'm an agricultural enthusiast, precisely focused on controlled environment agriculture. How can I get in touch with this team for necessary support?
Yes, and I have another question. He said, good morning, panel and panelists. It is always nice to bring happenings to the fore for information and knowledge. So one can always argue that something good is going on. NTA thanks and keep it up. Victor Obi from Owerri. Yes.
Okay, so who's going to respond to the first one?
I think it's to stay in touch with the pages of the Ministry of Agriculture and the agencies under their umbrella. So as the different initiatives unfold, that information is available. So just follow them and keep in touch, and these will all be shared, and how they then can participate.
And as you know, you mentioned that there was a visit to Brazil where Brazil had all the African agricultural ministers.
Yeah.
So the only country who had 2 ministers was Nigeria. We had both the Minister of Agric and Food Security as well as the Minister of Livestock, and they jointly signed an MOU. So this MOU we're going to be signing tomorrow will be the second that Agric and Livestock will be signing in this short period. So I totally agree, and I said they should continue to follow up with what is happening with Agric. Quarantine services, just continue to follow what's on, and there's a whole lot they can benefit.
Okay, what are some of the challenges facing the SDM, and how can they be addressed?
I believe one of the challenge was having this meeting take place because of all that have been happening, and so that has been resolved. We're now having, yes, we've been having backdoor channels and all that, but having the two big guns on the table, the two vice presidents representing their principals, their president, to say, okay, this is finally happening face to face, and I think that's better than it gives credibility to what we've been doing in the backdoor. So that was one, and it's been resolved. Now the second challenge is where we will get both ministers. Now I'm referring to the Brazilian vice president now as minister, and our own minister of industry and investment, to talk about the trade barriers. And that MOU is critical for us to start looking at what are the issues and start mitigating them one by one and eliminating or reducing. And like she said, that conversation is on the table. I think when it comes to movement, like we said, the BASA agreement is on the table. Again, challenge resolved. So the backdoor event have resolved a lot of challenges on the table. So we really do not have anyone that is kind of popping out too much as it is, but they're already on the negotiating table.
Oh, yes.
So another challenge that you had alluded to earlier in the conversation was implementation, right? So you signed this document, the SDM. It didn't seem to be implemented for a number of years. Of course, partly to COVID, even though back-end discussion was going on. But how it has been resolved is the fact that, like she had mentioned, there is an MOU that talks about monitoring and evaluation. Aside that, in almost all the MOUs, there has the specificity around a joint implementation team. So if you don't have a structure to bring an MOU to life, it just remains a document on the shelf. And previous MOUs perhaps did not have this thing, but now you have a multi-stakeholder implementation mechanism in every MOU. It was one of the provisions that we insisted should be across the MOUs. So there's a team that sits on a regular basis, and then they will, of course, let the Ministry of Foreign Affairs know what steps have been taken, what concerns they have on a periodic basis. So that way it also helps with implementation. So we don't just sign these fancy documents and then get almost no value from them.
So what's the media campaign for the SDM, how to increase public awareness concerning this forum?
I'll say the first one is what we're doing right here. And many thanks to NTA for making this possible. We have the media campaign here. We're using regular media houses. There will be campaigns on social media. I think maybe Marion will pick up. Yes. Yeah, so the campaign also. So we're deploying, forgive me if I say we're using all our arsenal to ensure, because it is so important. We want people to be aware. One of the people that intervened online had mentioned that they were just hearing it for the first time, which also underscores the need for us to actually engage the media. So there's pre-media engagement, which is what we're doing now. There'll be media engagement while the events are going on. We're also partnering with the media on all of these activities, and then thereafter there'll be pre-event engagement is what I mean. Then at the event, then post-event engagement with the media. Because some had also asked, how do we get the information if we're not able to be there? So yes, there is a deliberate effort to ensure that the Nigerians get to know what the deliverables are, what have we achieved, how can they leverage on it. Yeah.
And let's not underestimate the intention of having the private sector as observers tomorrow. We have over 100 companies coming into that room. So it's not, we're not leaving it to the vice presidents and their ministers. We've invited, the private sector as very key stakeholders who then drive the implementation of some of these MOUs. So also their outreach, of what they have seen from their perspective, what they're seeing are the benefits or whatever highlights that they want to give and say, think about this, we heard this being discussed, but what about this issue? So we're expecting over the next 2 days, the engagement and inclusion of the private sector, through a very transparent process, will also proliferate a lot of the information out there.
So where is this holding? And who will be attending?
Tomorrow, 24th, we're having the bilateral, the SDM, actual dialogue mechanism taking place at the level of both vice presidents, and that will be at the State House Conference Center. We will have a gala dinner, same area, but by invite only. And we all know that the State House, if you are not registered, registration for those that have been invited will take place in Ministry of Foreign Affairs today. And then on the 25th, which is Wednesday, where we have the business forum, will take place at our sister agency under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the NIA, there, so that we can really have dialogue. But I keep forgetting, there's one very important information. The Vice President's wife is coming. So
of Brazil.
Of Brazil.
Wow,
so she's coming as well. So there's this real support from the women's side. So our Vice President's wife will also be engaging with her, and there will be that aspect also taking place. So don't be surprised when you see a beautiful woman next to the Vice President of Brazil, and you see our own
beautiful second lady.
Yeah, beautiful second lady there as well. Yeah, it's going to be a lot happening. So it's going to be fully engaged for the 3 days starting today. The field trips are ongoing as we speak. So Brazilians started arriving since 2 days.
Okay.
Coming in, because again the journey is far.
It's far.
So some got in this morning, and so but the field trips are ongoing. And tomorrow we would spend the whole day at the State House and Conference Center, where we'll have, and again our Vice President will take his colleague to see Mr. President to pay him a courtesy call as well tomorrow. So it's going to be a very busy but fun day or days for all of them. The Brazilian Vice President is coming in the morning, very early in the morning, and immediately start the program running. That's how important it is for him.
All the activities will be here in Abuja, or you're going to...
Apart from the field trips taking place right now that are outside Abuja, one is in Abuja, the rest are outside Abuja, but the Tuesday and Wednesday will be in Abuja. State House Conference Center and the sister agency under Foreign Affairs, NIA.
There will be a display of Nigeria's rich cultural heritage.
Yes.
Of course. So what are we expecting there?
So, for example, today there's a lot going on with the Lagos, because they're going to see the creative economy. The group going to Kebbi, the Emir has put on a small mini Durbar to be able to showcase, the culture and the traditional rulers and how that all works in the sort of the northern part of the country. Tomorrow, during the gala, is where we're going to showcase a lot of the culture of Nigeria, and the minister has organized this through her different agencies. At the business forum, we have the museums coming to display some of our pieces. So we've made sure that there are those little elements throughout the 2 days. Yeah.
Culture and food.
And food.
Oh, yes. Yes, exactly.
You're making me hungry already.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. I think we have to, call it a day concerning this conversation. Let me just first thank Mario Moon, is the Technical Assistant on Agriculture, Office of the Vice President. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Ambassador Janet Olisa, Director Regions, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for coming. And also Patience Okala, Special Advisor to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Thank you for the enlightenment this morning.
A pleasure to be here.
And giving us an appetite for what to expect from the SDM.
And I think, Juma, I've behaved myself amongst the ladies.
Of course you have. Yes, thank you so much, ladies, for coming. It's been a very, very interesting conversation. Yes.
All right, we'll now take a break for our second conversation on ECOWAS. Stay with us.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
when we think about the digital economy, you can see it as the marketplace for digital goods and services. And increasingly, it's becoming a force to reckon with and an incredible contributor to economic growth, because we've seen the growth in technology and digital platforms. Technology has it really permeated every aspect of life and business, the way we live, the way we work. And when we talk about the digital economy, we're really talking about leveraging technology and digital platforms in a powerful way to drive growth, to drive solutions to problems, to drive applications, and to provide services.
The digital economy is something that has the potential to help Nigeria leapfrog a lot of its development challenges, right? Because think about what the mobile phone did for Nigeria years ago. That is the potential we have for digital, because it has a way of reducing the barriers to innovation. It has a way of being able to transform service delivery, whether it's government's delivery of services or whether it's services in the health system, where people can use digital to actually be able to see their patients better. But it takes a lot to realize that potential of digital. The first thing is like every other thing, there's an infrastructure you have to build to be able to make sure that digital economy can thrive. Think of something like, capturing that happens in Nigeria, right? Where you capture, people's biometric when they go for a driver's license, when they go for passports, and each of those are separate things. Largely a system where we're able to streamline that and actually have a platform that exchange biometric information that makes it easier for people to access passports, easier for people to register to vote. But today it's very tough, right? But those are basic infrastructure that needs to be invested in. A lot of it is through government and private sector collaborations to make it happen.
If we're looking to accelerate growth in the Nigerian space, we really need to look at enabling the digital economy. That includes providing digital infrastructure, connectivity, because that's the highway, like the highway that everything rides on. We need to think about digital capacity building in terms of the suppliers to the economy and also the consumers within the economy. So a robust digital literacy initiative. The good thing about technology is that, one, it helps you to transcend boundaries. Two, it creates a level playing field, really, because if you create a solution, a technology-based solution that is applicable in this environment, that same technology can be applicable, exported to other environments. And, technology platforms also help drive collaboration, right? When we're thinking about innovation, when we're thinking about business growth, collaboration is an important part of that. So when we think about the impacts with the rest of the world, we find that actually technology platforms are giving us an opportunity to engage more actively, to collaborate, to create partnerships, to even export our knowledge and services for people to engage with. All the great things I'm talking about technology and digital platforms, they need access, internet access, broadband access. So we need to make sure that access is more available and affordable for the average user.
The most important thing is to think about where you want to go as a country and actually what type of policies are going to help get you there. There are examples of countries who've been able to transform using digital, for example. There are very clear things those countries did to be able to make it happen. So a lot of this, the pathway to be able to solve these problems are not mysterious, right? It takes courage of the policymakers to be able to understudy some of these things and bring in the policies that work to be able to help them.
Yeah, welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Now to our second topic on the 67th ECOWAS Summit has come to a close, marking a significant moment in the region's history. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu handed over the chairmanship of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of States and Government to President Julius Malema. Mada Bio of Sierra Leone after serving 2 terms.
You're right, Jimayan. So we'll take a closer look at the implications of this transition, the priorities for the new chairman, and the challenges facing the region.
And we'll also analyze what this means for West Africa's future. We're now being joined in the studio by Dr. Adoye Matthew Omale, International Affairs Analyst. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria as always. It's been a pleasure having you.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
Yes, welcome.
Well, Dr. Omale, let's look at the implications of this assumption of office of President Bios. What do you think will be the implication for the region?
Well, Julius Maada Bio is a very experienced president. He has been president of Sierra Leone since 2018, almost 6 years. So he has garnered a lot of experience, having interacted with his peers in the last 5 to 6 years. So in terms of experience, in terms of knowledge, in terms of having participated in the sub-region's socio-political and economic sphere, I think he is well equipped. Also, he's stepping into a very large shoe. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in these trying times of ECOWAS, has been able to wield the remaining bloc together to move ahead. Initially, ECOWAS would have wielded the big stick on the 3 that exited, but it was President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's dexterity that has to make ECOWAS to take a more diplomatic and a more engaging measures. And you can see, even from this summit, you can see how another window of negotiations, opportunity of collaboration, opportunity of diplomacy is still being extended to July. So you can see that Maada Bio is coming in from a very, very good ground foundation that has been laid by Nigeria under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's leadership.
You said he's been there for 6 years. So
Yeah.
how will his leadership pattern impact the ECOWAS decision making and all that?
Well, the major focus now is to wield the regional body together, is to integrate them as much as possible, especially how to war the 3 countries that are exiting, because they are significant. With the exit of these 3 countries, ECOWAS GDP of almost $800 billion might be seriously impacted. Don't forget that in terms of security collaboration, the Sahel states are very crucial. Maada Bio has a lot of work to do, especially convincing these countries to either come back into ECOWAS or to continue to collaborate with ECOWAS. As the Commission chairman has said, the Commission chairman has said, negotiation is still ongoing. So we hope that at the end of the day, reasons will prevail, and the 3 countries that have exited ECOWAS will be brought back.
So what concrete steps do you think the summit will agreed on because it has gone on in addressing the political instability in member states, especially the Sahel region, looking at security?
Well, ECOWAS protocol on good governance and ECOWAS protocol against military coup, that has been done. Don't forget that it was that protocol that led to the current dispute between ECOWAS and the 3 Sahelian states. But as it is, the coup, to my mind, has come to stay. All what ECOWAS need to do now is to get a commitment for a transition program from these 3 countries. And if that commitment is gotten, then ECOWAS can convince them to come back and then to be part of the bloc. Because you can see that from the various resolutions of the ECOWAS, even from the address of Mr. President, where he still said that the window of opportunity should be kept open for those countries that have exited. So that is one strategy. What impressed me about this particular summit was, for the first time, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu convened the economic summit, and you could see the level of participation. That is to show you that, because we, as scholars of ECOWAS, we have been worried about the drifting of ECOWAS from economy. It was an economic union fundamentally, but over the years, ECOWAS is now drifting towards political issues, drifting towards dripping towards security issues.
Because you need all those for you to have a stable economy, actually.
Yes, I agree, but what is creating a tension in ECOWAS now is ECOWAS emphasizing security and politics rather than economic. So I think what Mr. President, as the outgoing chairman, has done was to say, look, our main focus is supposed to be economic cooperation, economic integration. And that is why the summit he convened was very, very significant. And you could see the level of participation. In political economy, they tell you that the economic base determines everything. So if you get the economy right, the superstructure will naturally take shape. So many of our challenges here in ECOWAS have to do with our economic situation. Issues of insecurity, issues of political instability can be curbed if the right economic programs and policies are put in place.
So let's look at the progress that have been made so far, especially in the towards regional integration, especially during the tenure of President Tinubu.
Yes, like I said, a lot of progress have been made. Had it not been for an experienced president. Don't forget that Tinubu was barely 1 month in office before the mantle of leadership was given to him. As if the ECOWAS leaders knew that they needed an experienced and astute politician in the person of Tinubu, because the body was virtually going under. And what President Tinubu has done was to harness the entire leadership, those that are not disgruntled, to ensure that he wheels them together. You could see at this summit, out of 12 countries that are remaining, about 9 sent in their president, which is a very good number. And so President Tinubu was able to wield the body together despite the storm, and that is a very, very, very remarkable achievement on his part. You could also see that during the economic summit, even Mauritania that had existed was invited, so it shows you that everything is being done to ensure that the body moves forward. You could also see that in terms of financial commitment, Nigeria has been bearing most of the burden. And Mr. President's tenure, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's tenure, still reinforces that the notion that Nigeria remains a critical funder of the organization. And that has been sustained throughout the president's tenure.
Okay, you've said that ECOWAS, yes, is working, is gaining recognition, but critics also argue that ECOWAS is losing credibility and relevance. So how valid is this criticism, and what kind of institutional reforms needs to be put in place for ECOWAS to regain trust and strengthen the unity within the ECOWAS bloc?
Well, ECOWAS is 50 years, and whether we like it or not, there are some achievements. You cannot just throw away the baby and the bathwater. But the critics are also right. The critics are right because most of the vision of the founding fathers of ECOWAS have not been attained. The ECO, up to today, while the European Union has been able to put in place the euro and so on, the ECO has not taken off. The West African Monetary Union has not taken off. This is because most countries have held on to their sovereignty. They are not willing to give themselves. So on that basis, ECOWAS have not been able to meet the necessary criteria. Even the projects that they have outlined, the West African Power Pool, and other projects that the Abidjan, the ECOWAS Highway, and so on. Most of these projects are more or less on paper. And that is why I told you that ECOWAS have shifted attention from the economic aspect. They have totally negotiated. So everything is now politicized, it's now about governance. But the key thing about economic union, even the issue of free movement of persons, it has created a lot of problems. So these things need review. What are the things that we have done? Like you asked, what are the institutional reforms that are needed to make sure that ECOWAS, first and foremost, all these barriers, like language barriers, like block barriers, Francophone, Anglophone, all those things have to be jettisoned with if ECOWAS is to be very, very proactive in addressing the challenge of the sub-region.
Now, as we begin to wind up this conversation, how would you, or how will President Bio engage with other regional leaders, to promote cooperation and collaboration? What advice would you give? How do you think it should go about?
Well, the best advice that I will give the incoming president is to ensure that the confidence of all the leaders of ECOWAS is very important. He needs to build the confidence, especially the ones that have exited. Like I said, you prosper more when you are united. There's no doubt that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are a very critical component of the ECOWAS sub-region. And everything, Madabio should do everything possible. The committee that was set up with the president of Senegal, Faye, as chairman, I have not gotten the detailed report of the committee's submission. But I think it's in the right direction. That committee, President Bio should continue to empower that committee so that before the end of July, we should be able to get a positive response from those countries in terms of maintaining the cohesiveness of ECOWAS. However, if they become recalcitrant, then the 12 remaining countries will have to move ahead. And that is where President Bio's leadership comes in. How he's going to galvanize these remaining 12 countries to ensure that the vision of ECOWAS is promoted at this point in time. So ECOWAS has prospects, no doubt. ECOWAS has prospects. It has prospects because of the market. It has prospects because of the proximity, affinity of the various countries. So it has prospects. And if we can tap the economic benefit, mainly if we can harness the economic benefit, I think it will benefit most of the countries in the sub-region.
Okay, Dr. Adeoyo Matthew Omale, International Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for coming and shedding more light on the 67th ECOWAS Summit. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you so much for your time. I am Juma Yusuf. Do have a wonderful day.
And I'm Ademola Adeoye. Do have a lovely day.